Hey everyone, it's Michael here with GoodieReader.com, and today we're taking a little bit of a departure from the standard types of videos that we're shooting. I'm going to talk to you about my favorite anime, and I've really just got back into anime. I kind of grew up watching Macross and Robotech, you know, Ghost in the Shell, Ranma 1/2, Gunbuster, which I thought was a classic that a lot of people slept on, and I kind of gave up on it, you know, when I was like 13, 14, kind of gave up on anime, not because like I just kind of watched everything that was really good, like Ninja Scroll and things like that, and I kind of found that there wasn't a lot of great stuff happening. And then both this year I discovered Crunchyroll, and they pretty well have one of the best anime sort of apps out there for both iOS and Android. You can actually watch full episodes for free without signing up, but you do see commercials, whereas I kind of pay that monthly Netflix style subscription fee and I don't have to see any commercials. It's just like full online episodes. Now I'm going to talk to you about my favorite 5 animes that for the most part have either started this year or it's in their 2nd season. And I noticed a trend in anime, and it kind of crosses over to manga too, so a lot of these things I'm talking to you about do exist in the manga form, and mostly the manga is actually way older than the episodes actually are. So 2 of my favorite animes that I've seen this year is Sword Art Online and Log Horizon. Now both of these shows kind of do something very unique in terms of storytelling devices. They exist in a game world, and for more specifically like the MMORPG world. Now we all know that World of Warcraft has the most amount of players out there, and people these days are escaping reality to live in a virtual world, whether it's EVE Online, whether it's like Warcraft, Star Wars The Old Republic, RuneScape, and hundreds of others. So what I kind of like about what a lot of anime is doing these days is that the set pieces are in the virtual world, so it's like hit points and mana, and they're using like lingo, and a lot of them are set either in the present date or in just the near future. So let's talk about Sword Art Online. It's currently in its 2nd season, and I found that just this anime really stepped up the visual element of animation. And if you look at sort of the older animation I mentioned at the top of this segment, this is like night and day in terms of shaders and being able to tell effective stories and actually have like good animation and stuff by today's modern standards. It's not exactly on Pixar level, but I find that it's amazing. And the characters in Sword Art Online are super endearing. I guess the premise of the show is that they were in a virtual world and they connected to the virtual world in nerve gear. So you can think of it as like a VR helmet, and basically what it does is it gives you sensations. So you could run in a game, you're not running in real life because the neural receptors stop at your spine, so you could feel like you're moving and you could smell and taste and touch, but your body's actually just staying there and stagnant. And what happens, I guess, at the beginning of like the episode and transcends throughout the others is that they end up locked in the game world where the fiendish developers, like everyone, all 10,000 people in the game, you're not allowed to leave the game until you actually beat it. And what I find interesting about that is that there's no logo button, and if people try to disconnect them in the real world, which actually happened, they die because they send like a neural shock to the brain and actually kill you. So a lot of the people that were in the game actually lived by themselves in apartment buildings, so they died. They didn't have anyone to take care of them, and then a number of people ended up getting shipped off to these like special hospitals where they can actually stay alive through like intravenous and things like that. I find that it was just an awesome story, because if you died in the virtual world, you died in the real world. And so the stakes were really raised. And I found that for the 1st season, it was all just like living in this world. And then, you know, eventually they they, for one reason or another, they got out of it. And I just find that it's amazing. And I find that there's really no other anime out there that kind of has these sort of characters that actually make you feel something, as opposed to just like set pieces or throwaway characters. And I think that even in season 2, a lot of almost all the characters that were the main characters are still there, but they're in a different game, so they look different, but they're still the same people, and they meet each other in real life, and a lot of the people that they meet in real life, they look similar to their avatars. I recommend to check this out. It's almost at the end of season 2 right now. Very cool. Log Horizon's almost the same way. It was set in a game world, and then this like event happened where they were in a post-apocalyptic like Tokyo, sort of Japan type of area. So it was sort of like something happened where their game characters actually retain the same character classes and their skills and their traits, but they went from the virtual world into like almost a real world, but no one really knows if it's the real world or whether it's just like this alternate type world. It's very interesting because, you know, the whole thing is that if you die in this new world, you become resurrected, but you lose the memories of the real world. So the more that you die, the more that you forget, like your childhood best friend, or the city that you grew up in, or the place that you went for ramen. So it was sort of like the type of people that died a lot, they forget the memories of their old life, and they become just like part of the game, or as an NPC as you would, because they lose all the aspects of humanity. I kind of like this because the people, so there's two sorts of people. There's like the adventurers, who are the people that came from the other world into this new world, and then there's like the people of the land, which are the traditional NPCs. Now that the world that they came from and the world that they're in, it's all still the same, but everything's like post-apocalyptic and collapsed and everything, so a lot of the quests are the same, but as time goes on, things just dramatically change. I find that like Log Horizon and Sword Art Online they come from the similar mold, but they're totally two different animes, and I find that if you kind of like this new direction that animes are taking, I suggest to check it out. Another one that I really like is Akame Ga Kill, and this is sort of like one season, and I don't know if they're actually going to do a second season, but it's about a team of assassins, and they're kind of started an assassin group to kill corrupt people, and eventually, you know, they're basically people that are really good at what they do, and there's like sort of the quintessential evil empire, and the empire, you know, oppresses people and all that. So basically their job is sort of to move their way up in the chain until they can actually take out the key people in the empire that are doing the most dastardly things, and hopefully the people themselves will rebel and overthrow the government. So each episode is basically killing one specific person, and as the season goes on, they sort of move their way up the chain. But I really like this show because the characters themselves are a lot like Sword Art. They're really endearing, but the characters certainly don't stick along for very long, and there's some huge twists as you go towards like the end of this first season, which I think is really the only season. It's very cool. The anime art style is really well done. The main characters really compelling, and again, all these animes are like Japanese, but they're just subtitled in English. One of the new ones I just discovered that actually just started over the summer was called Parasyte the Maxim, and the premise behind this is it's all just set in the real world, and I guess what had happened is these parasites came from an indeterminate place. So it's sort of so early that they haven't really defined yet where they actually came from. The parasites themselves don't really know their origin story. But what happens is the parasites kind of come and take over the human host, and then they have to eat other people to survive. I know one parasite took over a dog, so the dogs eat other dogs. It's kind of pretty violent, but I find that it was very kind of cool as a unique concept. The main character, basically, instead of the parasite taking over his brain, it just took over his hand, and so he could actually talk with his hand, and his hand could like turn into various, you know, crazy little swords and this and that. But yeah, I mean, the parasites by their design are nefariously evil because they take over their host completely. It's only the parasites that only take over a specific aspect of a human. Do the humans retain their identity and mental state, and the parasites are their own autonomous entity. So they tend to work together, but the parasites that actually take over a human completely, they see the half-breeds as a threat to them because they don't know what to make of them, and something like this isn't really the norm. So I kind of find that there's not a lot of main characters like in this. There's maybe 3, and they really take their time with the story pacing and developing the relationships between the characters. But it's like Akame Ga Kill. It's like very violent, but I find it's not like an R-rated violent. It's more of like a, you know, it's more of an adult styled anime. So I think that's what I liked about it. One of the others that I liked is called Trinity 7, and it's a bit cliche in the respect that it's an all-girls school and one guy is actually there. So that sort of storytelling device is about as cliche as you're a D&D character and you meet your fellow campaigners in a tavern. It's basically like that. But I find that Trinity 7 is actually fairly cool. It's all about sort of like magic users that hunt other magic users. And the main set piece is like this college where the people that are called the Trinity 7 are basically like the best of the best. You know, they're the people that study the hardest, that actually, you know, they drive themselves to become better mages and things like that, and each one can basically control different elements, and they basically can control different things like time and space and things like that. So each person basically has their own different types of ways that they sort of cast spells and their own identity, and depending on, you know, what elements you control and what type of magic you study kind of defines like who you are as like a person. But for the most part, the magic that people study is not really who they are. It's actually the exact polar opposite. So they kind of bill it as the Trinity 7 is named after the 7 deadly sins. And so someone who is studying like magic that has to do with, say, lust, for example, they are the exact polar opposite of that. They're totally conservative. So it's a cool dichotomy. But what I find about that is, I did almost all these things, is that the characters are just really endearing. This really isn't that violent per se, but I kind of feel that it's a little bit pervy. So if you like that sort of manga anime style that's like a little bit pervy, it has those elements to it. So it's cliche, it's a bit pervy, but I find that everything else, it's actually fairly cool. I just actually can't stop watching it. Finally, Fate's Stay Night. And this is my last one that I just discovered. I actually slept on the first version of this that was released a few years ago, but Fate's Stay Night has really only been around since about the summertime. As of this date, it's only 10 episodes, and basically it's like the Holy Grail Wars, where basically there's a set of masters and a set of servants, and basically the masters are the people participating in the war, and the servants are like these legendary heroes from the past, you know, people like archetypes, like the Juggernaut, like the fighter, like the lancer, like the caster, and things like that. So it's very cool because like people aren't evenly matched. You know, you'll have someone who's a fighter fighting a lancer or fighting an archer, and these people traditionally don't mesh very well together. So it's kind of like a lot of intrigue, but a lot of the main characters, they're pretty young because they're actually the prodigy of the first 2 seasons of this that was like done years ago, and so this is sort of like a modern day sort of reboot. But if you watch the original Fate that this will all make sense to you because a lot of these characters that were in the original are actually super young, like 3, 4, 5, 6, and now they're like in their like late teens. So I kind of find that you could watch this as a standalone like I did and totally enjoy it. I kind of like the whole master-servant relationship where it's like these legendary heroes that keep on fighting all these grail wars over the years, but they retain their own identity and their own desires, and I kind of feel like some people, they're not happy fighting just like these mindless wars, and they want to do something else, or they want to, like, you know, save their country from like 1,000 years ago that may or may not exist anymore, but you know, they retain all the memories as they did as a hero from the past that did just such either a very dastardly thing or a very noble thing, and they became like part of like this like endless cycle of people fighting for the Grail, and the Grail ultimately gives one wish, one to the master, one to the servant, so people have a reason to actually kill each other's servants, to kill each other's masters. But it's not very holy, any of this, but this actually season so far really plays a very interesting dynamic into the whole concept of like people are fighting for this holy relic and doing some pretty dastardly things, but one person seems to buck the trend without giving any spoilers. I think this is really good. So hopefully you've liked this little installment of my favorite animes of the year. I'm very into it now. I used to be into it a lot. I kind of took like almost like a 15-year break, and now I'm back into it with all this like fresh new stuff. I'm really feeling. If you've watched any of this stuff that I'm talking to you about, I've tried really hard not to spoil anything for you, but just give you like the general outline. But again, it's like I would love to talk to you further about like plot twists and spoilers and things like that. Drop a comment below. For Goody Reader, my name's Michael, and everybody take care.